Hey! You're my favorite horror story channel, and I have a story for you. A true story, and it just recently happened to me. I had a pretty rough upbringing, to put it lightly. My mother was negligent, and my father was absent. However, I have an aunt who I am very close to, and I feel like she's more like my mother than my actual mother. After I graduated, I moved in with my aunt, as she had kindly offered me a place to stay. It worked out well, because the place I ended up working at was only 5 minutes away from where she lived, so I couldn't pass up the opportunity. She lives in a really nice area. It's a bit of an elderly community, I'll admit it, but it's well kept and the people there are kind. Her place isn't huge, but it isn't tiny either. It's got an upstairs and a downstairs, but it's only got 2 bedrooms, and it's a condominium. My bedroom is very small, but it's the perfect size for me because I'm quite a minimalist. However, my room is right next to the window to the outside, and that's where the story truly begins. At first, I didn't really notice anything odd. Occasionally, I would hear scratching noises against the window or whistling, but I thought it was likely just trees, since there are some near the window. I figured it could also be just normal noises from the house or from outside that I wasn't used to yet. For a while, I didn't even pay too much attention to all the noises. After all, I worked the overnight shift, so by the time I got back and went to bed, it was morning, so I'd go to sleep with the birds chirping. But on my days off, or on the days I wanted to get a little more sleep before work, I'd hear all that constant whistling and scratching against the window. I tried not to be paranoid about it, but things only escalated from there. I have a few plants by my window, so it's a little difficult to see past them. One night, the scratching began again, and I suppose curiosity got the better of me, and I just had to see what it was. I walked over to the window and looked outside, curious about what I'd see. It was so dark I couldn't see much at first, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw the faint outline of a person. They were just standing there, whistling. I thought it was odd, really odd. I mean, it was maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. Most people would be asleep, yet this person was outside, whistling. That didn't explain the scratching though, until I noticed the person going up to everyone's windows, scratching against them with their fingernails, and even tapping the windows sometimes. I assumed to try and get people's attention. Most people would probably freak the hell out at that point, but for some reason, I wasn't really scared, honestly. I mean, sure, this creepy person is trying to be creepy, but I was safe where I was inside. Even so, I pulled out my phone to call the police while keeping an eye on that person to explain what they looked like to the police. It was probably the light from my phone that alerted the person, who I now noticed was a man, but he turned towards me and began sprinting over to my window. I kept my composure, still trying to explain the situation to the police, but the look on the man's face was something I can only describe as deranged. As he began banging on my window, I simply watched. He kept attempting to break it or at least scare me by repeatedly hitting the window over and over again. I rolled my eyes and told the police officer that he was banging on my window now, and they told me that help would be there soon. Around this time, I began mentally thinking about how long this had been happening, for months at least. It didn't happen immediately after I arrived, but I'd been living there for about 7 months at that point, and this man was seemingly doing all this for at least 4 or 5 months, maybe even longer. I don't know how nobody here didn't notice or didn't call the police before I had, or maybe they did, I don't know. The man was still banging against the window, but I had been spacing out and thinking and hadn't looked back at him. I turned around again when I noticed he had a gun in his hand, which he was now slamming against my window. I thought maybe it wasn't loaded, maybe it was just for show, or maybe that was just what I was trying to tell myself since I was now afraid. The officer on the line must have heard me gasp, because they asked me what I saw, and I immediately told them that the man had a gun, and he was now trying to break my window with it. The officer told me to hide in the bathroom if I was able to, and I did. All the noise woke up my aunt, and I frantically explained the situation to her, as the both of us hid in the bathroom. It was agonizing waiting for the police, but finally, I heard the police cars outside and let out a sigh of relief. It was faint, but I heard one gunshot, then shouting. It lasted about 5 minutes before it quieted down. After everything had settled and the officer on the line told me it was safe to go outside, I was greeted with a very shocking scene. The man who I saw, he was alive, but he had a gunshot wound, likely because he was attempting to use his gun on the police, and they fired back. At least, that's what I think happened. He was unconscious, but what the police found on his person was nothing short of terrifying. The man had a journal on him, where he had details on every person who lived in the area. Details from what they looked like, to their assumed age, and why he thought they'd be a good target. So, my theory that he was just trying to creep us out was wrong. The man was likely attempting to lure someone out and kill them. He also had a few other weapons on him, and the man wasn't lanky or anything. He actually had muscle to him. While the police were explaining what they saw in the journal, I managed to catch a glimpse of his entry on me. It was disgusting. He thought I was much younger than I am, maybe only 17 or 18. I'm in my mid-20s, but to his credit, I don't look it. And he described me as cute, but worth taking out because I was such an easy target. It made me sick to my stomach that he stalked everyone here, essentially, but was only stopped from hurting someone because of me. What would have happened if I didn't call the police? The police confirmed that the other people living there had made complaints, but whenever they showed up, the man was nowhere to be found. It was likely only luck that he saw me and attempted to try and break in. As scary as it was, I like to think that it saved someone's life, or at least prevented them from being the ones to experience that. I don't know why he tried to approach me specifically, or why I was the only one he directly approached. I took one quick glance at the guy, and he was shoved in the back of the police car, just to see if I recognized him. And I did. He was one of the men who, during the day, would walk around all of the buildings while walking his dog. During the day, he didn't do much except walk his dog, and he seemed friendly enough. But at night, he tried terrorizing many people around the complex, apparently planning on taking people out one by one. I'm still in contact with the police, as I officially gave my statements, and may even have to appear in court. I'm not sure. I don't know what he will be charged with, since it's still early in the process. But I figured that the journal alone has a mountain of evidence regarding his intentions. But I'll never be able to forget that journal, how detailed it was, and how he sincerely seemed to have a plan for every single person on that list.
My name is Tania, and I'm 14 years old. At the time of this event, I was around 5 or 6. I remember this incident like it was yesterday, even though it's been years. When my family would go out, since I'm the youngest child in my family, my mom would always hold my hand and she would always make me stay glued to her side, while she made my older brother, who is 2 years older than me, walk in front of us. Now that I've given you this background information, please listen to my story. It was a Sunday and it was sunny out. My mom needed to buy some train tickets and my brother and I went with her. While my mom was talking to the man who was selling the tickets, I decided to turn and look around, and that's when I saw her. The creepy, old homeless woman was staring at me and beckoning me to come closer. She kept looking at me and licking her lips. I was terrified. My mom noticed that I was staring at the woman, so she decided to pinch me and tell me, "Tanya, don't stare, it's rude." After buying the tickets, we went to our aisle of the train and I again saw the homeless woman. She looked like she might walk over to us. She kept motioning me to come over with her hands, and I could read her lips saying, "Come here." Her eyes looked wide as she stared at me. I almost thought that her eyes would pop out. I felt so scared and started crying. And my mom was worried, so she comforted me and handed me her phone and told me to start playing games on it. A couple of days later, my mom was watching TV. I was cuddled up with her playing on her phone, and my brother was on his tablet, and something chilling came up on the news. I will never forget that woman's mugshot on the TV. It was the homeless woman's face. Written on the screen below her face was, "Alleged serial murderer arrested." It was revealed that this woman would lure kids between the ages of 5 and 8 and take their lives. When my mom saw the person's face, she looked petrified, like she was about to cry. I'm glad that I didn't follow the woman. Who knows what would have happened to me if I had gone over to her. I don't know anything about the woman now, and I'm glad I don't. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay safe out there.